Hey, what's up everybody? This is going to be a video about the Path of Exile 2 ascendancies. What an ascendancy essentially is it's class specializations for your character. It's going to give you more options to customize them to whatever your playstyle is. For the 6 classes that are releasing on early access, which is the Warrior, Mercenary, Sorceress, Witch, Monk, and Ranger, there's going to be 2 ascendancy classes for each of those classes. Now, again, this is going to be for beginners. I'm going to be speaking to this for people that not really knowing too much about Path of Exile and want to get into Path of Exile 2. And again, Path of Exile 2 is definitely going to be more streamlined. It's going to be more beginner friendly and welcoming. And I just definitely want more people to play the game. So if you're more advanced, I'm going to tell you ahead of time, I'm most likely going to be skipping over a lot of the most detailed aspects of these ascendancy classes. I don't want to overwhelm people. There'll probably be a more advanced guide in the future that I'll have, but for right now, I'm just going to give it very simple. Now, how do you get your ascendancy classes? Well, when you play through the campaign, at some point you're going to get access to Ascension trials. These are dungeons that you can complete in order to unlock your ascendancy class. When you unlock that, higher difficulty trials will unlock additional points to spend on your ascendancy class tree. Now, not to overwhelm everybody, but each of these ascendancy classes will have a separate tree from your original skill class tree. There's going to be 2 different trials with different mechanics, and then you can choose which one you want to take care of first for your Ascension. There's going to be a 3rd trial coming later. Again, this is going to be on release. Instead of 2 ascendancy classes, there are going to be 3. But again, during early access, each class will have 2 ascendancies. One of the trials is going to be called Trial of the Sekimas. In this trial, you're going to have a new resource called Honor. When you get hit, your honor will decrease. If you lose it all, your run's over, and you're going to have to start all over again. When you progress, you're going to pick new rooms to explore. You're going to fight a whole bunch of different types of monsters, face different challenges. You also might find different NPCs that will benefit your run in general. Then you have the Trial of Chaos. The Trial of Chaos will not have an honor system. In this trial, there's going to be different effects that you find along the way. This could be monster buffs. This could be different types of hazards. This could be curses. A bunch of different types of things could happen during this Ascension trial. Again, you want to complete these to get new points for your ascendancy class tree. There's no current calculators at this time. When there is, I will make another video breaking all of that down. Now let's get into these ascendancy classes. First, we're going to talk about the Warrior. The Warrior has 2 ascendancy classes. The first one is called a Titan. The next one is called the Warbringer. The Titan Ascendancy is a very, very tanky class that does very well with dealing heavy blows and stunning enemies. Now, this is going to be a lot of slow attacks with a big focus on defensive capabilities. This is going to be a great playstyle for players that want to have the slow gameplay but have really, really big hits. The Titan Ascendancy has the Earthbreaker. This is a 20% chance for slam skills that you use yourself to cause aftershocks. This is going to be a very powerful mechanic. If you have a big cooldown like Hammer of the Gods, this could definitely trigger a big spike in damage. The Titan Ascendancy class also has crushing impacts. Your hits are crushing blows. That increases the staggered damage dealt big time, and it allows you for more heavy stuns on your enemies. Titans also have surprising strength. That's 40% more damage against heavy stunned enemies. Now notice that could also help with your crushing impacts. This is going to make big damage windows. When you have increased damage to stun targets, there's a huge potential for a lot of ability procs within those windows. And that means Titans could unleash a ton of damage. The other Warrior Ascendancy would be the Warbringer. This playstyle combines your melee combat with a bunch of your war cries and totem summoning. This would be amazing at bosses. While your totems draw aggro, you can deal damage while you're dodging attacks, putting as much damage out there as possible. Warbringers have Answered Call. That grants a skill called Ancestral Spirits. This skill lets you summon spirits that attacks enemies when you summon a totem. The possibilities of this are really interesting because now with your totem you could summon an ancestral spirit that will draw aggro away from you while you attack the boss or the enemies that you're attacking. Warbringers also have Jade Heritage. This has the skill of Encased in Jade. This is a huge defensive mechanic. This skill gives you temporary invulnerability, making it a huge tool when you survive boss encounters or some really tough enemies. I could see hardcore players really leaning towards this. And lastly, you have Warcaller's Bellow. Corpses in your presence explode when you warcry, dealing 25% of their life as physical damage. Me, as someone that usually plays a witch, I think this is kind of cool, just on some necromancy. This is very similar to Detonate Dead from Path of Exile 1. There's going to be some very interesting synergies with this, and I can't wait for us to explore that. The warrior ascendancies are very interesting, and I think they're going to do very well when the game releases. Up next, we have the sorceress. The two ascendancy classes for the sorceress is the Chronomancer and the Stormweaver. Let's start with the Chronomancer. Now, the Chronomancer is going to be very interesting. The Chronomancer manipulates time. This is such an interesting approach to combat, especially in Path of Exile 2, and I'm really excited to see what we got here. First, you have the ultimate command. This grants you the skill Time Freeze. This allows you to obviously freeze time for a small period of time. This is going to be such a big deal for big boss fights and those chaotic encounters that you run into from time to time. Again, I see this being something very popular with hardcore players because this could save your life. You also have something called Footprints in the Sand, and this grants you a skill called Temporal Rift. This allows players to rewind time and you will get mana and health back that you lost. Again, huge for those big boss encounters and those chaotic encounters. Imagine you're at a boss fight, super challenging, and you're about to defeat it, but you notice that you have no more flasks, or your health is down, and you hit Temporal Rift and you rewind and then you drop the boss. This could be really clutch. Lastly, you have Unbound Encore. It grants the skill Time Snap. What Time Snap does, it resets all your cooldowns. When you have Time Snap with Temporal Rift and Time Freeze, this is going to be big. I'm very excited for sorceresses just with the Chronomancer, but now let's take a look at the Stormweaver. The Stormweaver is very spellcaster focused. It's going to focus on critical strikes, elemental damage, and status ailments. Also, you get a new mechanic called Spirit Gems. First, you have Tempest Caller. This grants the skill Elemental Storm. Elemental Storm triggers on critical hit with spells. Now I've done some research, and there's at this time not a lot of information based on this skill yet. In the future, I will come back to this and break it down. Next, you have Strike Twice. This allows you to stack multiple instances of shock on your enemies. What that means is it increases the damage that they take. This is just going to be great to amplify your damage output. Then you have Shaper of Storms. All damage from hits contribute to shock chance. I can see this giving more synergy to your Strike Twice, and in turn, giving you more damage. We all want that. I think we have some really good versatile type of ascendancy classes for the sorcerers, especially with Chronomancy. That I'm very interested in. Next, we have the Mercenary Ascendancy classes. You have the Gemling Legionnaire, and then you have the Witch Hunter. The Witch Hunter is going to be focused on hunting down demonic and undead foes. Also, it's going to be able to open up with a huge first hit damage, following up with some speed and elemental damage mitigation. This is definitely going to be a beast in the endgame content. First, you have Obsessive Rituals. This is a defensive ability that absorbs elemental damage. In exchange for that, you lose 50% of your armor and your evasion ratings. Next, you have Zealous Inquisition. This gives you a 10% chance for your slain enemies to explode, then dealing 100% of their maximum life as physical damage. The chance is doubled against undead and demons. Again, in endgame content like the Breach or Beyond or Delirium, this is going to be clutch. You also have Judge, Jury, and Executioner. That gives you Decimating Strike. This allows you to deal up to 30% of an enemy's maximum life as damage on the first hit. So imagine you run in on something and boom, 30% of its life gone instantly. That's insane. And lastly, you have Witchbane. This is a new mechanic that reduces enemy damage output. Your enemies gain concentration. This is a resource that over time will replenish. When concentration is broken, enemies are no longer able to attack. This is really big for survivability. The Witch Hunter seems like it's going to be a very popular class, specifically with endgame content. I'm very excited about this. The next ascendancy class you have for mercenaries is the Gemling Legionnaire. This is kind of crazy. Basically, they take gems and they put it directly into their flesh. Now, this changes your attributes and gem qualities all around. First, you have Integrated Efficiency. This grants 3 additional skill slots. And that says it on its own. It's going to give you more diversity and customization with your greater skills. Next, you have Thaumaturgical Infusion. This is going to give you an increased elemental resistance based on the number of socketed support gems of specific colors. And as we know, resistances are going to play a huge part in endgame content for Path of Exile 2. Then you have Crystalline Potential. This adds 12% quality to all skill gems. This has the potential to change a build massively. Because we don't know all the skill slots, skill gems, and everything that comes with that in Path of Exile 2, we can only speculate on skill support gems and things of that nature with this specific ascendancy class. So for now, we're just going to leave it alone. And in the future, we'll delve deep into it. Now we have the monk. The two ascendancy classes for the monk is the Acolyte of Chayula, I hope I said that right, and the Invoker. The first ascendancy class for the monk that we're going to talk about is the Invoker. This is going to give them access to a ton of huge and powerful elemental abilities and ailment enhancing effects. This is going to add a lot of depth to a very melee focused class that leverages elemental damage. So let's get into it. First you have and scatter them to the winds. This will grant the skill Elemental Expression. This allows powerful waves of elemental energy that are unleashed on your critical strikes, so a huge damage boost. Next is Faith is a Choice. This will grant a skill called Meditate. What Meditate does essentially is it will double your energy shield. So this is great for preparation of boss fights, or you know there's going to be a chaotic encounter coming up, pop it and you're good. Up next you have I Am the Blizzard and I Am the Thunder. This grants you 10% of all damage as extra lightning or cold damage respectively. Also, shocking or freezing enemies creates chilled or shocked ground. Around the inflicted enemy is going to guarantee shocks and chills. That's very good. Lastly, you have I Shall Rage. This grants the skill Unbound Avatar. This allows you to turn into an unbound avatar. You gain Unbound Fury, which when it's full, it turns into a really powerful transformation. In this form, you're going to inflict additional ailments and increase damage. Now let's talk about the Acolyte of Chayula. The monk sacrifices their spirit for darkness. It embraces all of that. Now the monk manipulates shadow damage and all the powers of darkness granted by Chayula. Up first, you have Embrace the Darkness. Embrace the Darkness gets rid of all of your spirit completely, replaces it with darkness. This is now your new resource as your monk. Now it starts at 100, but every level after this, it increases by 5. Also, it acts as a damage buffer. And also something very interesting, whenever you take damage, your darkness is reserved first, means it will protect your health pool. This only lasts for 10 seconds. Next you have Grasp the Void. You gain 1% of damage as extra chaos damage per 20 unreserved darkness. This is going to be such an interesting way for you to scale your damage output, and it's going to be very strategic. Up next you have Chayula's Gift. Plus 10 to maximum chaos resistance, and your chaos resistance is doubled. Again, in endgame content, you're going to probably end up having to get some resistances for chaos, and this is going to be pretty powerful against it. Now you have Ravenous Doubts. Mana Leech is instant, so now your mana recovery is going to be massive. Consuming Questions. You cannot recharge Energy Shield. Mana Leech effects also recover Energy Shield, so this is more Energy Shield manipulation. So this paired up with Ravenous Doubts, it's going to allow your Energy Shield to be recovered. Again, more synergy. And lastly, you have Waking Dream. This grants the skill Into the Breach. This will allow you to see the flames of Chayula. And when you see these flames, you can collect them. And when you collect them, you get damage bonuses, life, and mana. I think the best way to explain this Ascension is chaotic. I'm looking forward to it. Let's take a look at the two Ranger Ascendancies. First, you have Deadeye, and then you have Pathfinder. Deadeye focuses on your projectile manipulation, your movement speed, your damage, and increasing your attack speed. First, you have Endless Munitions. Skills fire an additional projectile. When you get your attack speed up and your damage up, getting an extra projectile is going to do more damage. Now you have Gathering Winds. Gain Tailwind on skill use. Lose all Tailwind when hit. What that does is by up to 20%, your action speed increases. And that grants boost to movement, attack speed. It's really good for people that want to play a fast playstyle. But remember, you lose it when you are hit, so be careful. And lastly, you have Eagle Eyes. You have no accuracy penalty at distance. You're a ranger, you want to be as far away as possible. Well, now you don't have an accuracy penalty when you are distant from your enemy. The second ascendancy class is the Pathfinder. This focuses on your poison damage and flask manipulation. You could double the maximum number of poison stacks, and this allows you to turn your flasks into damaging concoctions. Flows on impact, sky's the limit. First, we have Fulminating Concoction and Bleeding Concoction. This is going to allow you to turn your flasks into throwables. Obviously, this consumes your flask charges, so you just got another resource that you could do damage with. Next, you have Contagious Contamination. The most damaging poison on your enemies you kill is spread to other enemies within 1.5 meters. This is going to significantly change the clear speed to your runs by spreading poisons from the weaker to strong enemies. I love it. Overwhelming Toxicity. This doubles the number of poisons that you can inflict on your enemies. Now, imagine using this with your Contagious Contamination. Now you're starting to see the vision. And lastly, you have Running Assault. You get a 30% less movement speed penalty when you're using your skills while moving. Whenever you use certain skills when you move, you get a movement penalty. Well, this reduces that by 30%. These are two ascendancies that really give a lot of personality to the Ranger class. I'm looking forward to see how the Pathfinder works in the end game, especially when it comes to spreading your contagious contamination. Sorry, I'm stuttering here. Overwhelming toxicity, all of that is going to be very interesting. I'm looking forward to that. And lastly, we have the Witch. The two Ascendancy classes are Blood Mage and Infernalist. The Blood Mage focuses on life and energy manipulation. If you get the synergy and the manipulation right, this could be very interesting in the endgame. First, you have Sanguimancy. This grants the skill Life Remnants. Skills gain a base life cost equal to base mana cost. The Blood Mage requires you to spend not only mana, but life for your spells. When you kill an enemy, they drop Life Remnants, and you can recover life from that. Up next is Crimson Power. Gain Energy Shield from equipped body armor as extra maximum life. This lets you use your Energy Shield body armor to get a ton of bonus life, but you gotta sacrifice. And that sacrifice is armor or evasion from those pieces of armor. You definitely want to find more Energy Shield heavy armor. You have Vitality Siphon. 10% of spell damage is leached as life. This is great since you are using your life to cast certain spells. Lastly, you have Gore Spike. 1% increased critical damage bonus per 20 life. You're going to definitely want to build your life pool as big as you can because now your critical damage is going to be great. The second Witch Ascendancy class is Infernalist. This allows you to summon a Hellhound, and you can transform into a demonic form, getting more mobility and increased damage. But the downside to having demonic form is you get increased damage taken over time. So first, you have Loyal Hellhound. This Hellhound takes 20% of the damage dealt to you. This is just great for survivability all around. Next, you have Pyromantic Pact. Your maximum mana is replaced by maximum Eternal Flame. So now your mana is converted into Eternal Flame. This fuels a ton of abilities and spells, but you take maximum life and energy shield as fire damage when Eternal Flame reaches its maximum. You don't want it to overflow, so you gotta keep your eye on your flame and you'll be all right. Next, you have Bringer of Flame. This wants to keep you above 30% of your Infernal Flame, because when you're above that 30% threshold, you and your minions deal ignite damage. So again, it's a lot of you paying attention to your Infernal Flame. You don't want to go and spend too much, but you also don't want to go too low either. Lastly, you have Demonic Possession. This turns you into a demonic form, increases your casting speed and your damage. Once your life reaches 1, the transformation ends, and then the skill goes on cooldown. Also remember, you do take damage over time. With all of these Ascendancy classes, I really like the idea of having a more flavor for each of your characters that you choose to play as. Path of Exile prides itself on customization, but having something at the end game where you could have said flavor for your characters gives a little bit of guidance that I think is going to be more welcoming for newer players. And again, this was just a very surface level explanation of what these Ascendancy classes are. We're not touching on the trees or anything like that because again, they're not released at this time. In the future, I will go over it, but as of right now, this is what it is. Comment below on what Ascendancy class looks the best to you, and we could discuss it in the comments. I am very excited for December 6th with this early access coming out. I will be playing it big time. I will also be streaming it on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/BaseLaRock, and you can come in there and chill with our community. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and like it, and if you like the last few videos as well as this one, feel free to subscribe as well. And I will see you guys on the next video.